Hello and welcome. What I'm going to tell you is shocking, but it gives you a huge advantage because you can take control over your health. The benefit is that with knowledge, you can make an informed choice as to how you will react or if you will react at all. Very quickly, my first encounter with the shocking reality behind disease. I got a glimpse of what is behind disease after a very bad argument with my late, as it turned out, psychopathic husband, when I shouted that I was leaving immediately. Within 10 to 15 minutes, I started to have chest pain and difficulty breathing. Then my husband came to the door and said, "If you stay with me, all those bad symptoms will go away." That sounded utterly absurd, and I thought he was having me on. But then pointed me to the window, and to my shock and horror, there were two strange men outside. He later told me they were criminals armed with a gun. With a small gesture of his hand, the two men outside on our driveway immediately left, and within minutes I was feeling well again. I was stunned at what I experienced because I really believed the symptoms I had were due to some physical causes. And then I remembered seeing other such strange events with others. I've seen a lot more since, and I have been able to use this information to regain and retain my health. And I've been able to advise others with this information that has helped them too. So I believe you can use this information for your benefit too. My husband finally revealed that there is underhanded, foul gameplay behind the non-communicable diseases, using ideas aimed to cause you to react as to suffer harm. This is not straightforward, but needs to be set up with minor cheats behind the major one. I will discuss these in detail in later sections of this introductory course. Briefly here, there is a concealed threat and mentally presented ideas. Now, where there is a concealed threat, the person will react with fear, that is, fight or flight response. But the threat is concealed. As you will see, they are lacking information, so they won't be able to appraise their bodily reactivity correctly as fear. The one important piece of scientific evidence is that a fight or flight response is seen in almost all disease. This evidence, however, is being discarded because only the physiology, in other words, the meat robot, is considered. A person's reaction is not considered because the person is not considered. Only the physiology is considered. And not seeing any reason for it, it is discarded. It's seen as a dysregulation of the autonomic nervous system. In a concealed threat, certainly there must be criminal intent, but they do not intend to carry out a crime. There are other reasons for using a concealed threat. For instance, a higher emotional charge can be mistaken as acceptance that an idea that is perceived at the same time, concurrent, is real or true. The idea is the major pitfall, and knowing that ideas that occur out of the blue are not your own thinking, you don't fall for the idea. You realize that the emotional reactivity is not associated with the idea, so you can remain unmoved. The pitfall can be avoided. If you have not reacted to the idea, you are able to retain relatively close to resting metabolism. It won't be exactly at resting metabolism because there's the concealed threat, the fight or flight response. Although that will be modified when you understand that no crime is intended. However, all of the reactivity, the changes in physiology will be avoided. And that is where the very critical matter lies. Because the reaction, remember, is physiological. Physiological changes are what disease is about. Changes in structure and or function of the body. Even the fight or flight response, which is natural, is going to be very, very minimal compared to what it would be if you don't realize that there's a concealed threat. And it's important to acknowledge ESP and telepathy are real. These are what enables the mentally presented ideas to be perceived. I will be doing another lesson to explain these better. The experiments are not being done properly, and furthermore, the ideas presented by the medical establishment that all thoughts are created in your brain and therefore your ideas become a maze for which there is no exit. Because if they're your own ideas, they carry your authority. And if they keep coming up, you can't just dismiss them, even if you can't see a reason for them. And you will react to them as the high bodily reactivity seems to signal acceptance of them. Let me repeat. The notion that all thoughts are created in your brain is a maze for which there is no exit. If you accept that premise, then you are caught in that maze. You can only escape when you realize that telepathy is real. We can perceive ideas. And there is sufficient evidence, even though the scientific experiments are not being done properly, because millions of people worldwide have gone to the aid of a loved one, where they've only perceived the ideas that have called for help. They've been able to find the loved one and provided the help that was needed. So this is evidence. This is more than any clinical trials, etc., because we're talking about the testimony of millions upon millions of people worldwide. For an idea to be presented mentally, it requires relationship. There's nothing that goes out of one brain and into another. There is some entanglement where there is relationship in the mental realm. This is where we need to acknowledge that we are not simply a body. There's more to the story, even though we cannot do any experiments to prove that, although if the experiments on telepathy were done properly, that would provide very important evidence for the reality of a non-physical realm that we could call the mind. In the underhanded foul game play, there's not only relationship and relatively close to very close relationship between the chief offender and the person that they call the target. In other words, the person they want to affect. Now, it's not only relationship because the concealed threat causes the targeted person to become highly perceptive of the source of the danger. And of course, the source of the danger is the chief offender, the one who is posing the threat. So ESP and telepathy are heightened to the maximum in the foul game play, using the basic condition of fear and how the person becomes highly perceptive. In the next lesson, I will begin the discussion on the minor cheats that need to be done in order to be able to set up a concealed threat.